Greetings, Facebook Live. Welcome to WKYC's 3-Point Play. I am Ben Axelrod. This is Matt Florjancic. A lot going on the Cleveland sports scene, and we start today with the Cleveland Browns as the quarterback room continues to take shape, take form, continues to change, and another one bites the dust as Cody Kessler is on his way out of Cleveland and headed to Jacksonville, where he was traded for a conditional 7th-round pick, the former 3rd-round pick from just 2 years ago, from the 2016 draft, on his way to back up Blake Bortles in Jacksonville.
Well, I guess we don't have to worry about the line "trust me" when it comes to Cody Kessler anymore, unless it's "trust me, he wasn't going to win here." Unfortunate set of circumstances for Cody Kessler in terms of being a part of the 1-31 record that he had, and truthfully, had Cody Parkey, or 1-31 record that the team had, and truthfully, Cody Parkey, the former kicker for the Browns, was one made field goal in Miami away from giving Cody Kessler a win in his very first NFL start. As we know, Cody still winless as an NFL starter, as an NFL quarterback, really. Not a huge surprise to see him get dealt to Jacksonville. It's an interesting location for him. Not much will be expected of him going down there, but he will, if pressed into service because of injury to Blake Bortles, have a heck of a lot better supporting cast than he did in his first 2 years with the Browns. Yeah,
the Jaguars actually let Chad Henne go. He had been their longtime backup behind Blake Bortles. So I don't know if they'll look to bring in another veteran or if they'll feel comfortable with Cody Kessler being their next man up behind Blake Bortles, who doesn't exactly set the world on fire as a quarterback. I do think it's interesting. Chris Sims from Bleacher Report, he in passing made a comment last year that Blake Bortles was the 70th best quarterback in the NFL, and he was asked then to rank 70 through 1, and he started with 71, and it was actually Cody Kessler. So Jacksonville now has the 70th and the 71st best quarterback in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, once the Browns signed Drew Stanton earlier this week, the writing was on the wall. Obviously, they have Tyrod Taylor already. They're going to draft a quarterback first overall, so there's your 3 quarterback spots. It's very rare that a team carries a 4th, although the Browns have in recent years. But now if they do it, it's looking like it's either going to be Kevin Hogan or another rookie. But, yeah, I mean, this isn't entirely surprising. I think it's interesting they were able to trade him just because he hasn't been a very productive player over the course of his NFL career. But a little bit like DeShone Kizer, where, look, he didn't help his cause, but he was also in quite literally a no-win situation.
Yeah, literally the young man had nothing around him, and from the time that he was drafted and people watched his game and then saw him work out in training camp and in the preseason, you knew he wasn't going to be the long-term answer because he had an inability to trust himself to throw the ball down the field. It wasn't so much that he didn't believe in himself. He did not want to hurt that pristine completion percentage and touchdown to interception ratio. He was scared to take chances, and truthfully, when you look at the Browns receiving corps, you can't really blame him for that because there was nobody that could go get the ball. But he was never going to be the quarterback that the Browns needed him to be. They didn't want to play him in 2016. They didn't have a choice. When those 2 starters went down early, they had to press him into service. It's not like last year where DeShone Kizer was the best of a bad bunch. They needed to play Cody Kessler because they didn't have a better option. And then when he got into games last year, we saw that the offense just continued to go backwards after sacks and fumbles and miscommunications and penalties. He just never was able to get it on track. This is a guy that started the offseason as number 1 on the depth chart, started training camp as number 1 on the depth chart. Within a week, he was number 2. Within 2 weeks, he was number 3. And you knew he wasn't going to be long for the taking. Unfortunately, he was just never able to string together what the Browns needed from him to be successful and to maintain that starter spot.
No, you're right. You make a good point. As recently as August, he was number 1 on the Browns depth chart. And by the time they got to that, really through the first 2 games of the preseason, the quarterback depth chart had flipped. And he was 3rd string behind Brock Osweiler and DeShone Kizer, and eventually behind Kevin Hogan as well. But yeah, I do think it's interesting to go back to that 2016 season because a lot of people were surprised they picked him in the 3rd round. I know there's the whole "trust me" line from Hugh Jackson. It's been reported, or there's rumblings out there, that Hugh was trying to do the front office a solid when he said that, and that this was an analytics-driven draft pick. And you look at I mean, Pro Football Focus, for whatever reason, I don't know if they need to focus a little more on football or something, but they love this guy. They love Cody Kessler. This seemed like an analytics-driven pick. He never fit the Hugh Jackson strong-armed profile like we talk about with Josh Allen and Sam Darnold. And then from the moment we saw him in the preseason in 2016, it was clear he was not ready to play in the NFL just yet. It seemed like he needed a redshirt year. And then what was it that they played the Dolphins in the third week of the season? Robert Griffin III goes down in week 1. Josh McCown goes down in week 2, and then Cody Kessler's the next man up, and they're running wildcat packages with Terrell Pryor for most of the game. And they were really just a field goal away from, really a couple of field goals away from winning that game. And yeah, it's he never really seemed to stand a chance. And like I said, though, he didn't help his cause. I mean, you'd watch him out there in Berea in training camp, and you would have to stop yourself from saying throw the ball,
right?
Because he's throwing these 4-down checkdowns to the fullback on 3rd and 11.
Right. Well, the pass that really stands out to me from Cody's fall down the depth chart during training camp was on 4th and seemingly 23 yards. He throws a 4-yard out route.
Yeah.
And
tight end,
that wasn't against air. That was actually against a defense. But here's what upset you the most is he wasn't the guy that got yelled at. It was Randy Telfair, the tight end, who got yelled at for running the short route. And you're sitting there laughing to yourself because you're like, there's no way in God's green earth that Cody Kessler was even going to throw the ball 10 yards. He never really gave himself a chance to compete the way that Osweiler and Kaiser did by taking chances. Even the great ones make mistakes. What separates the good from the have-nots are the guys who are willing to put it all on the line, go after it, and try to make plays. You're never going to win if you don't try to make plays, and that was always Kessler's biggest knock. He really was so focused on not turning the ball over that he never made enough big plays to justify his spot on the team.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And even looking at last year, I mean, he goes from 3rd-round pick to 4th string. Essentially, he was inactive for most of the games. The only real action he got, I think, was in that game against Tennessee that the Browns almost won when they yanked Kaiser in the second half. And yeah, they almost that game went to overtime. But you never had. Even I remember watching that game in the stadium. You never had the confidence the Browns were going to win that because you didn't have the confidence the quarterback would make the play to go down the field. And that's just, it's too invaluable in today's NFL.
Quarterbacks have to make plays to win games. This isn't 3 yards in a cloud of dust, Woody Hayes style football. You have to make plays from the quarterback position. And it wasn't so much that when Cody got the ball, we were about scoring touchdowns. We were just hoping that he got to the first down marker to give himself some confidence, because that is one thing that he severely lacked. He was too worried about what was being said about him and the doubts that people brought up about him. It got in his head, and all of a sudden when he got his chance, he completely spit the bit, if you will, and forgot how to play the position and what got him to this level. He's not a bad athlete. He's not a bad guy.
No.
But he has to trust his skills, and if he's not going to trust his skills, why should you as a fan?
Right, exactly. And like you said, though, Jacksonville, a much different scenario. The best defense in the NFL, good skill weapons around him, both in the backfield and at receiver and at tight end with Mercedes Lewis, although I think they might have cut him, so maybe not with Mercedes Lewis anymore. But Jacksonville's a very well-run franchise. They're getting new uniforms.
Did you expect to say that a year and a half ago?
No, you know what? Not necessarily, although that defense they've done a lot of good things with that defense.
Yeah, they have. They look good.
They had some high picks, and they actually took highly touted players. Who would have thought that might work out for a team? But.
And they signed key free agents,
yes.
too.
So we'll see. But looking here at our Facebook comments, Donnie Myers says, Browns should draft Josh Allen. I know we're not talking about the quarterback or talking about the prospects right now. I see that Mel Kiper's on a conference call right now defending having Josh Allen projected to the Browns in his latest mock draft. Another day in, where are you with the quarterback derby seemingly between Josh Allen and Sam Darnold?
I like to say that this is all smoke screens because that's typically what happens at this time of year. Anything you usually hear between the combine and the draft is fairly, you take with a grain of salt.
Exactly, yeah.
But they're starting to get a little smoke to this fire, so I'm starting to maybe wonder what is trying to get played on the chessboard in Berea. Are they trying to work a deal for that number 1 pick, and they're trying to increase the value by saying, hey, we don't know. We could go this guy to entice maybe somebody else to trade up to 1. I'm not interested in trading number 1. I'm interested in getting the best headgum quarterback that we can get for this franchise. If that's Josh Allen, great. If it's Sam Darnold, great. If it's Rosen or Mayfield, I'll hold my breath for the entire game, but I will go along with it and say until they prove me otherwise, so be it. But at number 1, it is absolutely imperative for the Browns to get the guy that they believe can lead them to the promised land. And if they think that's Josh Allen over Sam Darnold, then they're going to go with it. But look at what the Chiefs did last year. They had a chance to draft Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
They took Patrick Mahomes. They traded up to get Patrick Mahomes. They believed in him, and John Dorsey was the guy who helped facilitate that deal. I wouldn't rule it out as out of the realm of possibility that they take Allen number 1 overall.
Yeah, I think it's much more in play than a lot of people are giving it credit for. And we'll see. This is they've been at this thing for a long time. They've known they're probably going to be taking a quarterback first overall for a long time. I do wonder if they're trying to leverage
January.
Yeah. I do wonder if they're trying to leverage maybe that number 4 pick, though, if they can make it seem like Josh Allen is going to be off the board within those first 3 picks. Maybe that entices a team like the Broncos or the Bills to trade up to 4. I wouldn't be in favor of it, but it's, like we've said, it's out there. So
if it's Denver, I'm much more in favor of it because you're only dropping 1 spot.
And you know it's going to be another quarterback.
And exactly. So you could still have your choice of if you want to go Bradley Chubb, if you want to go Saquon Barkley, if you want to go Minkah Fitzpatrick, Denzel Ward, however you want to go, it's the guy you're going to want at 4 is still going to be there at 5 if you trade back to the Denver Broncos.
Yep.
The only thing that could ruin an otherwise fantastic night is trading to 12 and 22 or just further back in the first round than 5. I know Dave DiNatale and Steve Sanders and I talked about the only way the Browns could blow the number 12 pick last year was by trading it, and I think no sooner than we got that phrase out, they, of course, dealt it to the Houston Texans. But here's the deal with number 4. If they're really trying to drive the value up on that pick, they're doing a hell of a job.
Yep, I agree, although you mentioned Buffalo and that 12 and 22 pick. Just the fact that it's the number 22 pick scares me because that's been a cursed number for Browns draft picks.
Brady Quinn, Brandon Whedon he was. Well, I thought he was 21, but nope. Okay, we'll go with 22.
Maybe just stick to.
As long as it's not a quarterback, I guess we're in better shape than what we would for. If we were going with a quarterback at 22, because the history's not been on our side.
Yeah, it still just doesn't do it for me, so we'll see.
Nothing except for picking at number 4 does it for either one of us at this point.
Shifting gears to, number 22, there you go. Shifting gears to the Cleveland.
I cringe every time I see the word Kerrville, Texas, by the way. Every time I see that city,
Kerrville's a nice town.
A little piece of my heart breaks.
I think Kerrville's a nice town, although it was funny to see. Do you remember what a spectacle his pro day was just 4 years ago?
Yeah. There was a former president of the United States watching in a golf cart on the sideline. He was working out, which I did actually – I will give him his due on this. When he said, I want to make my pro day stand out, I'm going to throw in a helmet and shoulder pads, I applauded him for that because I don't like watching young men work out in shorts and T-shirts and projecting, this guy's going to be the next Johnny Unitas or Dan Marino because I saw a workout in a controlled environment in a facility against air. At least he took that next step. But outside of that, I mean, it was a nonstop circus with the kid from A&M.
Yep, there's no doubt about it. It was just funny to see. I remember the Nike sold his jersey and sold the gear from his pro day, like replicas. And I've never seen that for a pro day. And then here we are 4 years later, and he's holding another pro day.
He had multiple pro days.
Yes, so only him. But shifting gears to the Cleveland Cavaliers, They were on the court last night, falling to the Miami Heat, 98-79. One of those games that seemed like it was over before it started. I'd say
we even talked about that.
Yeah,
too.
I would say it was Miami Nightlife 98, Cleveland Cavaliers 79. Although they did lose Kevin Love in the game, I think that's the bigger story coming out of this.
Yeah, a bit of a disclaimer here. It's not a pretty picture.
Yeah, he ran into Jordan Mickey, the Heat center who was starting in place of Hassan Whiteside yesterday, and had a loose tooth, went back to the locker room, actually came back out, and as you can see, went back into the game with that loose tooth, but then he at halftime wound up suffering from concussion symptoms, seemingly from the same collision. So he's in concussion protocol. He's out for tonight against Charlotte. We'll see from there. They play again Friday. That seems like maybe a stretch. They play again Sunday against Dallas back at home. Maybe that's when they get him back, or maybe next Tuesday against Toronto. But for a team that now is just a half game up on Philadelphia and Indiana for that 3 seed, and that 3 seed is crucial because it allows you to not only avoid Toronto until the conference finals, it also, if they fall back to 4 or 5, that diminishes the home court advantage they would have moving, especially if they were to fall back to 5. They might not have home court advantage at any point in the playoffs. Not do or die. I mean, LeBron has said whatever seed he winds up, he feels pretty good going into that other team's building for game 1. But
unless it's Miami.
Yeah, and it's just, there's never a good time to lose your all-star center, as the Cavs have seen when they went through that 20-game stretch without Kevin Love from January to just about a week ago now. But not the best timing for the Cavs as they wrap up the last 10 games or so on their schedule.
Yeah, just when you think they were finally getting healthy, they got bitten by the injury bug. And, despite that, LeBron, when he talked to the media yesterday after the game, and I wrote about it this morning, he said he has no concern about where the Cavaliers are right now because, they've been down so many guys.
Yeah.
They're still down their head coach. That look, their focus is on improving communication on both ends of the floor, getting the best possible seed that they can is somewhere further on down the depth chart. They just want to get a rotation set. Yeah. They want to know who's going to play in these games. And that has been very difficult to do since they overhauled the roster in early February because seemingly everyone that they acquired has either been injured, ineffective, or not really either of both, healthy or effective. So it's been a really interesting time for the Cavs. And these last 8 games of the regular season, are going to be so critical for figuring out what is going to be the top 8, the top 10. You're not going to go much past 8 and 9 when you get into that playoff rotation, but you have a lot of talent on that team, and you want to figure out who works best with whom, and you've got a very narrow window to make sure that happens.
Yeah, they are right now, like I said, a half game up on Philadelphia and Indiana, who are the 4 and 5 seeds respectively at the moment. 3 games up on the Washington Wizards for that 6 seed. But, yeah, I mean, especially with Philly, I think Philly is such a unique matchup for this Cavs team with the lack of interior defensive presence that the Cavs have. I mean, that is not going to be a walk in the park. I'd feel much better about a 3-6 matchup against Washington or a 4-5 matchup against Indiana. But, look, we've said it before, these next few weeks, aside from that game against Toronto, although now the schedule looks whole lot tougher without Kevin Love in that lineup, this is not a murderer's row that they are facing down the stretch. This is an opportunity to really separate themselves for that 3 seed. Last night, again, I don't think it's the end of the world, and even if they were to lose tonight without Kevin Love, that's fine. But they cannot afford to go into another one of these mini slumps, these 3 or 4 game losing streaks like we've seen throughout the season.
Well, if they do that, they could be looking at the 6th seed.
Yeah.
And they don't want any part of having
They have a game with Washington left, too.
They have a game with Washington left, and, that's going to be – that could potentially be for any seed 6 through 3. You have to play your best basketball of the year, and we finally started to see what the Cavs looked like when they were playing well. And now they hit almost the reset button with Kevin Love going down for an undetermined amount of time. I would say the earliest you probably get him back is Sunday, early next week would be best case scenario. I don't think you see him back on the floor before then. But, just taking this as a whole, taking the one game at a time approach, The Cavs need to do the job on defense, first and foremost. They need to get tougher, and they need to get smarter on defense. And they're playing their best when they're forcing turnovers and turning defense into points on the offensive end. Until they find a way to consistently do that, they're going to be in these 124 to 121 slugfests.
Well, that's that. The 124 is a lot easier to get to, too, with Kevin Love out on the floor. I mean, that's his first 4 games back. They had scored at least 120 points. I think it was the longest stretch they've done that in franchise history, which obviously, especially in the last 15 years or so, has been a pretty successful franchise. But we'll see. They play Charlotte tonight at 7 p.m. Then they play the old Hornets, the New Orleans Pelicans on Friday, back in Cleveland as they start a 4-game homestand. But crucial stretch, and we'll have you covered here on all the latest with the Cavs and with the Browns and the Indians, who could forget, starting tomorrow. So that's going to do it for today's WKYC 3-Point Play. He's Matt Florjancic. I'm Ben Axelrod. Thanks for watching us on Facebook Live.